Mic check one,
Yo,
two.
get out of here with them weak ass shoes, yo.
Balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love.
What's going on, guys? And we're back with another episode of Balls Deep Podcast with Devin and Jovan. We got some big news coming up on this episode. Obviously, as always, I'm Jovan here with my co-host Devin. What's going on, Devin?
What's up, Jovan? What's up? I'm ready to talk some sports. You already know.
All
I mean,
right.
we haven't really talked in a while, so this is perfect. I guess you could say for the podcast because it's fresh takes. You know what I
Dev,
mean?
fresh takes. Some big news happening over this past week. So we got a lot to talk about for sure.
For sure.
Um,
But before we get started,
yes.
I didn't have opportunity to watch UFC. I know you did. So like, how was the card?
Oh, it was actually really good. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was extremely exhausted on Saturday, so there were a few moments that I wasn't able to watch because I was like in and out. But
Oh,
no,
the typical Giovanni, the typical
yeah,
Giovanni.
no, ultimately though, it was a really good card. It was it was really good. It was exciting. There was a lot of good fights on it. Um, I actually one event I'm really mad about is I missed the main event, which was the one I really wanted to see. Um,
That's what I was
yeah,
gonna
no,
ask you
it
about.
was
Yeah.
the big one. But it was funny to me because going into the fight, I was sitting with a couple people, and I was talking to one of our friends about the fight before the fight. He was like, "Oh, who do you think's gonna win and stuff?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's an exciting fight because obviously we know Derek Lewis is always gonna be exciting. He's a funny dude. Plus, he's got that one punch knockout power. But Cyril Gane, I was saying Cyril Gane's a more technical fighter. Um, so I kind of felt like he would have a better opportunity to take that W. He's a better technical fighter, but also Derek Lewis leading up to the fight was saying how he's never trained harder for a fight, which was something. It seemed like he was taking a lot more serious than he had previously. Like he
Yeah.
really wanted to win a title. So I was a little hurt that he lost because I'm a big fan of Derek Lewis. But
I think we
Cyril
all are.
Gane, yeah, but no, but Cyril Gane is real serious, man. You could tell. I mean, that dude's a really good fighter. But no, it was a good fight. Good card. Ultimately, it was
Yeah.
really exciting. It was a lot of good fights. You got to see Legend Jose Aldo, show
Yeah,
why
I didn't even
he's
realize he was on the card.
yeah, he's a man. But no, there was a lot of good fights.
Yeah, I was at a family party, so I was busy on Saturday night, but I was I had a similar take to you. I thought Gain was the more all around. He was the better all around fighter. However, I had Derek Lewis winning because of that one punch power. Like just just look at the fight against him and Rosenstruck. He was losing the fight, and it wasn't even close. And the next thing you know, he folded the man. So I figured he was gonna fold him, especially the way he was talking. But he's a big trash talker, and that's what I love about him. I think you can't really hate on the guy because he's fucking hilarious,
Yeah.
and he's exciting to watch. He has, I think, the most knockouts in heavyweight history or something like that.
Yep.
But Gain him the fact that he came out on top.
Well, most in UFC
It's
history now, I think.
yeah, but with Gain, coming out on top, it's only gonna make that division that more interesting because
Yeah.
I know him and Ngannou are friends or they were former training partners or something
Yeah,
like that.
they trained
So
before. Yeah.
yeah, so that's gonna be interesting because that's got to be the next fight. There's like
Oh
no
yeah.
dodging it, and then after
Mm,
that, it's only gonna set up. John Jones is in the picture starting next year and
yeah.
things of that nature.
Well, I mean, I think that Gain is definitely somebody to be, taken serious too. It's not even like he's just another guy. I mean, he's probably even. I mean, don't get me wrong. Francis Ngannou showed out in his last fight, and he proved that he could get a lot better because Francis Ngannou from his last fight and the fight before that, the difference between those two fighters was insane. You know what I mean? He became like
Yeah,
so much more technically sound, but even then, I still think Gain is still that much more technical than Francis Ngannou. He's still a really big guy, so he matches up in size with him.
Yeah.
And he's got obviously a lot of power too. He's capable of finishing Derek Lewis, um, which is huge. So, um,
Yeah. He
I'm
seems to
ex-
be quick on his feet.
definitely, and I'm excited for the fight. And I even saw some training videos between him and Francis sparring, and he was landing a lot of shots on Francis. He looked a lot faster than Francis, although it's sparring. They're heavyweights, and I don't think Francis can really spar the same as everybody else because he could probably still knock you out. So,
I mean,
so,
but
but but
he's also holding back.
yeah,
Actually.
exactly. But he did look really good in sparring against Francis. But that was, like I said, years ago. It's sparring, but it's definitely a fight to look forward to, and I don't think it's somebody that you should write off by any means. Not saying that you are, but in
Yeah.
general, UFC fans and people that are going to watch this, I don't think you should write Gain off at all. I think he's got potential to beat not only Ngannou but even John Jones. I mean, we haven't seen John Jones in a little while, so.
The first topic of the day was the MLB trade deadline. We were supposed to talk about this last week, but we didn't get around to it. So this week we're gonna, drop our winners and losers of the trade deadline. So go right ahead.
Well, I'll start with the winner. I mean, I guess we could both start with our winner. I think that's easily the Dodgers. For me, easily the
They're the
Dodgers.
winners of the winners.
I mean, I just like not even that they necessarily made the most moves because I mean there are other teams that got plenty better.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just so hard to say the Dodgers aren't winners. You know what I mean? They're coming off a championship. They already have such a stacked roster, and to add Trey Turner and Max Scherzer, one of the greatest pitchers ever, to your lineup, it's just like, dude, like, what the fuck? Like, it's
The
just
Richard.
yeah, and I mean, I'm not the type to say like I mean, obviously people say it and they don't necessarily mean it, but like it almost feels like just handing the title. Like you still got to play the games, of course. I understand that. Any sport you still have to play the games, but it's just like when you look at that roster from top to bottom, it's like how the hell do you beat that? You know what I mean? Like it's hard, and there are very few rosters in the league that are going to be able to compete with that. And it's not even necessarily just the batting. You know what I mean? Like there are plenty of teams that have the batting to go against the batting of the Dodgers, but when he starts to look at that rotation and that bullpen, it was just like nothing you can do. There's
Yeah.
nobody that's as heavy, from top to bottom as the Dodgers. And so for me, easily, without even having to give it a second thought, it's them.
It was rumored that the Padres, their division rivals, were like close to a deal for Max Scherzer, and the next thing you know, it comes out of left field that the Dodgers not only get Max Scherzer, but they go ahead and get Trey Turner as well.
The
So they got the best position player and best pitcher at the available at the deadline. So this deadline was crazy. I mean, I think it was the most All Stars that's ever been traded in a season or at the deadline, I should say. I think it was 10 All Stars got traded at the deadline, which
Mhm.
is exciting. And there was a lot more that were rumored to get traded that didn't get ended up getting traded. But with the Dodgers, they were desperate. Like although the record doesn't show, they were desperate, especially to get Scherzer because Clayton Kershaw is injured, so he's dealing with an injury, and we already know Bauer is out with he's out due to suspension or what have you. So getting reinforcements and the fact that the reinforcement is Scherzer, like you can't do better than that. And then the fact that Cody Bellinger, he's been underperforming this season, and you get a long term solution to Trey Turner because even if Turner doesn't turn out to do well this season, you still have him for at least another season. So
Yeah.
I think it was a big grab for them, and it was a surprise grab because no one seen it coming. It was like an
No.
RKO out of nowhere. But, I guess I'll be biased here, and I'll say the Yankees are a
Okay.
winner. I wasn't like necessarily like a huge fan of the trade deadline because obviously we wanted a pitcher, hoping for Scherzer and what have you. But the fact that they went out and got two left-handed batters
Mhm.
in Gallo and Rizzo, they were middle of the lineup left-handed batters at that because we already know they've been right-handed, heavy like their lineups. So the fact that they went and got two really good left-handed bats, both of which are upgrades defensively one in the outfield, one at first base. I think that alone was a win in my book. They acquired both of them, and they acquired Andrew Heaney from the Angels. Although Heaney is not as big of an acquisition as they are, um, he's more of a temporary fix until our guys come back. And when I say our guys, I mean Kluber and Sebi. So it's more of a temporary fix, and they didn't really give up any of their top prospects for any of them. So they were able to pay early in the week rather than later when the prices were getting more steep. So the Rizzo trade was a surprise, but I love it, or I loved it, but now I love it even more because everyone was saying that Gallo was the better acquisition, which he was, not gonna lie. But since the deadline, Rizzo's definitely been outplaying Gallo. So uh, I'm definitely happy about the moves. And although it seems biased, I think it was the fact that we landed three really good trades and didn't give up really any big prospects. I think that's a win-win.
No, yeah, definitely, and I agree. I mean, the Yankees got really good, especially in the lineup that's been struggling. Obviously, pitching has been for years like the really big thing for the Yankees, and obviously a lot of Yankees fans, people in general around the sport are thinking the Yankees need to grab pitching if they want to compete, but their batting has been, really not. It's not been, held up to its standard this season.
Yeah,
We've kind of struggled, but it seems like Rizzo and Gallo have kind of added some life to the lineup. The Yankees
for sure.
are really on fire right now. Last I checked, I'm not sure if they had a game yesterday, but last I checked, they were 8-2 in their last 10. So they're playing really good baseball, and they're starting to make up some ground on those first place. Well, it was the Sox. It's no longer the Sox. It's the Rays now, I believe. Um, but yeah, they're starting to make up some ground on the first place Rays now. I believe they're like a game and a half back from a wild card. So, and when before, I guess I should say prior to the trade deadline, or not even prior to the trade deadline, but around that same time they were uh some ways away. I believe it was probably about 8 or 9 games.
Yeah,
uh
people were counting us out pretty much.
exactly. I mean, I even tweeted it. I said I was this close to giving up on the Yankees this season. Even
Yeah,
after acquiring Rizzo and Gallo, I still said I might have had to given up on them. But they finally turned around as a team. So
yeah. I didn't necessarily think it was enough, especially after seeing what the Dodgers did. Um, but it's still a win, regardless if they were the winners of the deadline or just a winner. I think they are a winner, but they're not the winner. The winner is the Dodgers. It was the best trade at the deadline,
yeah,
hands down. But they are a winner, especially. And then after what we've seen since the deadline, it definitely was big acquisitions from them. So
definitely.
you got to give them their props. I mean, you are right. It is the Rays in first place. They're 6.5 games away out of first place, but they're 2.5 games out of second place, which is behind the Red Sox. So
Yeah.
uh, they're basically right now fighting for that second wild card as of right now. The 2.5 games out of the second wild card. But watch out, Rays. Yankees are coming.
No, yeah, they're hot right now.
But the only thing that's playing against them right now is COVID because a lot of their pitchers, just including their ace, is out with COVID.
Well, with that, I'll give my loser or
Yep.
my losers. I have two teams. Um, One of them's not really a loser, I would say, but it's the Cubs. They're not really a loser. Obviously, they didn't move around all those players for nothing. But it does suck in the sense that, as a fan, you literally see the one team that has won your team a World Series in years, basically just get blown up. So it just sucks to see that. So not
So it's not the
necessarily,
Cubs; it's the Cubs fans. The
yeah,
Cubs fans are
really.
the losers.
Yeah, they're not necessarily losers, but Kyle Schwarber gone, Anthony Rizzo gone, Chris Bryant I'm pretty sure is gone, Javier
Yep.
Baez gone. That's like the core right there, just absolutely blown up. Like I said, they're not losers because they didn't just get rid of these players for nothing. They were sellers. You know what I mean? They knew it was really their time, and they acquired a lot of good pieces for the future. So it was good for them right now. So they're not necessarily losers, but it does suck. I can see as a Cubs fan, like if that were to happen as a Yankees fan, that sucks. But really the biggest loser for me, back to the AL East, is the Red Sox. And I think the biggest reason I say that is because I feel like the Red Sox, although they've been having a really good season, um, they should have known that they had to kind of re up for the second part of the season. You can't kind of stay stagnant. You can't remain stagnant, and obviously you know that's it showed exactly what I'm talking about because they really didn't acquire anybody. I believe they got Kyle Schwarber, who's obviously a home run machine, but now he's hurt. And so now the Red Sox, when you're in a season that's so long as the MLB season, no matter how good you're playing throughout the season, every team is going to hit a wall at some point. For how many games, you know, that's determined at that moment. You know what I mean? But what would help when you hit that wall is when you acquire players at the trade deadline that are going to keep your team running when players that have been hot all season start to hit that wall, start
Yeah.
to struggle a little bit. You have guys that'll be able to pick that up and pick up the rest of the team. And I just feel like the Sox remain way too stagnant, and it's really showing in the standings because they're falling, they're dropping. The Yankees are catching up. They were in the first place wild card spot. I believe now they're in the second place wild card
Mm-hmm.
spot. So they could just as easily not be in the playoffs come the end of the season when everybody thought, you know, they were the best team in baseball at one point because they were. And so for me,
It's
they're
okay.
losers because they haven't made enough moves. They just remain stagnant and they got too comfortable. And it's really showing now. The season is really starting to wear on them, and it might cost them a playoff spot.
It's okay because their true colors are showing. No one really had them making the playoffs this year. They've pretty much been a surprise, to everybody.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're starting to, I don't want to say wear and tear, but this is what people were expecting from them. Is like the fact that their fuse is kind of dying out.
Yeah.
But as a Yankee fan, I love it. But but all jokes aside, the Schwarber move, I believe, was a backup plan because they were trying to get Anthony Rizzo at the deadline, and then the Yankees swooped in and and took him from him. And I think they were trying to get Jose Barrios from the Twins. That didn't work out. So a lot of the moves that they were trying to make just didn't pan out. They got outbid for a lot of the guys, so they had a result to backup plans, and it just wasn't enough. And then as for the Cubs, I agree. They did get a lot for all their people, their players. They basically traded away their entire infield. They weren't wrong in doing so because they were sellers. They had to.
Yeah, they had
You better get something out of everybody than nothing. But for Cubs fans, it definitely sucks in that aspect. But before I move on to my losers, do want to say my favorite move of the deadline was Javi Baez going to the
Oh
Mets.
yeah, yeah, I like that move too.
Especially because as a Puerto Rican, the Puerto Rican national team, they play with Lindor and Baez played together, and that middle of the infield is phenomenal for the national team. So when the trade happened, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And then Baez, prior to the trade, said that he wanted to one day play with Lindor, and he
Yeah.
was willing. He was willing to play second base if he got to play with Lindor. And then the Mets is like, he said he wanted to play, so trade him over here,
Now
and it
all
happened.
Lindor got to do is start hitting some baseballs.
Yeah, they made it happen. So, and what makes it worse for Cubs fans though is that everyone that they traded away pretty much hit a home run.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it made it worse for Cubs fans that it happened that way.
I think they
But
all hit a home run in their first game with their new team. I'm pretty sure,
yeah,
which is
they did.
crazy.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. As Cubs fans, it hurts even more. But you have to be happy for them because my losers is I have two teams. So the first one is the Rockies. They didn't get rid of their big pieces, and like Trevor Story is a free agent
Yep.
this offseason. So
Free
you're
agent, they
gonna
got
and
nothing for him.
exactly they got nothing for him. It gives me uh OKC vibes from at the NBA where they didn't get anything for Durant and he just walked away. So
Yeah.
they didn't get nothing for his story after all those rumors. I don't know if that. I know the Yankees tapped in and there was no traction, so they just moved on. That's all I really have to say. The Rockies. You can say Trevor Story is a loser too because he doesn't have the chance to compete for a contender in the second half of the season. But my big loser is the San Diego Padres. So I like the move with Adam Frazier. I'm not saying that they didn't make any moves.
Yeah.
However, they needed to make move with pitching. Although I think the rotation is good, it's not good enough, especially when you play in a division with the Dodgers. Let's say all their pitchers come back fully healthy, and then Trevor Bauer comes back from suspension or being under investigation or whatever. Like that's a stacked rotation. And then they went out and got Cole Hamels. He's old, but they went out and signed Cole Hamels for the time being, which he's still a veteran who has experience. So and he's a lefty. If when they're healthy, that's a problem. And you're in their division. Like you could have went out and got Scherzer, you could have went out and got Barrios, but you didn't. You were
And that
this close to
Barrios
getting
move was huge for the Blue Jays. Really big
yeah,
for them.
like you were this close to getting Scherzer, and then you literally watched your division rival, like not only get Scherzer, but then go get Trey Turner as well, and you just don't make another move. Like
Yeah.
Barrios is the next best available pitcher. You go out and trade what you have to get him, but they didn't. So that's the main reason why I say they're a loser because they had a need and they didn't go and make a move for it, and they watched their rival, who's pretty much their biggest competition in the NL, get better as they just pretty much stayed.
Probably their biggest competition if they even want to compete for a title. Because if we're being honest, I mean the Padres are a really good team, and they're
Yeah,
more than capable of beating probably any team in the MLB. Um, but if they can't even get out of the NL beating Dodgers, which is very likely, you know, it's kind of like I said with the Sox. Obviously, the Yankees aren't what the Dodgers are. No team is. The Rays aren't. The Blue Jays aren't. But the Sox were in first place and they got comfortable. They remained stagnant. And not that the Padres are in first place because right now the Giants are, I believe.
yeah, they are.
It's
That's what I'm
not
saying.
even yeah,
The Dodgers,
yeah.
I mean, the Giants are the best team in baseball.
That's what I'm
So
saying. The Giants are hot right now. The Dodgers, on paper are one of the best teams. Healthy, probably, would be the best team. But you're sitting there in third place in your division. You want a shot, and you kind of remain stagnant. You're too comfortable instead of going and fixing those needs, like you said,
yeah,
and actually get and making a push to not only make the playoffs, but beat these teams like the Giants and Dodgers to ultimately get to the World Series because you can't get to the World Series if you can't beat your own conference. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
but yeah, no, I agree, and you can't get comfortable like that.
There's big news happening in soccer. Uh, so we'll mention the first. I'll pass it over to you with the first one. Because I don't know much about this guy, but Romelu Lukaku. I know he's a former player of Chelsea. But he's heading back via transfer. So why don't you talk about it?
Well, I think this is a big move for Chelsea. This is actually something that I was talking about with a friend of ours, Denzel, from Expansion Pack Podcast. If you guys might have tuned in, we've talked about them before. But Denzel, one of the hosts of Expansion Pack Podcast, is actually a Chelsea fan, and I was talking to him about it. He was talking about the needs and the wants of all Chelsea fans, really, because all Chelsea fans and Chelsea in general, they love Romelu Lukaku. He was solid for them in Chelsea in his previous tenure, and they need a striker. The issue previously was their previous coach. He wasn't really big on Romelu Lukaku, which ultimately led to his being out. But now Thomas Tuchel, we saw what he did with Chelsea last year. Huge surprise. I mean, he completely turned the team around, won them a Champions League, which was huge. So, um, you know, the addition of a Romelu Lukaku, a position that they need. A striker is huge for them, especially considering, like I said, me and Denzel were talking about it before. The rumors were that the asking price was, over 200 million euros, and they even wanted to add a couple players. And ultimately, they ended up getting him for a lot cheaper. I believe it was somewhere around just under 100 million euros, and no added players. So, to fill a position of need with such a talented player, because Romelu Lukaku is one of the best, probably a top five striker in the world. Um, he performed really well for Chelsea before. I have no doubts he'll be able to do the same again when he comes there. But yeah, to be able to get one of the best strikers in the world that fills a need at striker for under 100 million euros and not have to part ways with some of your other players is really big for Chelsea. And obviously, like I said, like we mentioned, you know, just having come off a Champions League and already having gotten that much better, I'm excited because I told, when we spoke on soccer, I was saying I was really happy to see Chelsea, there in the Champions League. I was really happy to see them win. I was rooting for them because it's not a team we see all the time. Um, but not only just that fact, but the fact that also um, we didn't get to see them with a full season under Thomas Tuchel. He won them the
Yeah.
Champions League, but we didn't get to see that full season. Now we're finally going to get to see not only a full season, but a much better Chelsea team.
News drop. My guy Messi is going to PSG. Uh, basically they agreed in principle to a 2-year deal, and the deal includes an option for a third year. So before I get into my excited PSG fan mode, Jovan, as a devastated Barcelona fan, uh, please share your thoughts.
I don't know why I got to be devastated for. I mean, it is what it is, man. You know, he had a long tenure at Barcelona, won plenty of titles. Barca's, a Spanish giant. I have no doubts that they'll be in the limelight again. Not that they're not. I mean, they're still a really great team even without him. I have no doubt they'll be able to land, premier strikers in the future. Obviously, it hurts to see, in my opinion, the greatest player ever. Uh, somebody really one of the guys who got me more into soccer. He's not the guy who originally, made me a soccer fan, but he's definitely one of the guys who made me indulge a lot more into soccer. And so to see him leave the team, no longer be with the team, definitely sucks. I feel like it's not necessarily the fact that he's leaving that sucks the most. I feel like it's the way it happened that kind of makes it a little bit more sour. The fact that, you know, last year we knew he wanted out.
Yeah.
He wasn't really happy with the president and the direction in which the president was taking Barcelona. Um, so he wanted out, and then now we finally get rid of the president. Um, and he's actually happy with Barca. He's happy with the direction of Barca. He actually wants to stay now. Barca obviously wants to retain him. He's the best player in the world still,
Mm-hmm.
and he's incapable of doing so based off, you know, financial issues. And that sucks because you wish something like that would be better handled, better understood prior to, that happening and kind of just being uh, brought upon you in the moment. Like that's if you feel like that's something that you would kind of be aware of before it were to happen. So, or from Barcelona's perspective, you would think that that's something that they're aware of. So, it definitely sucks to see him go. But I think more so what kind of made it burn, left it sour for me was the fact that it happened in the way it did.
It sucks, but it doesn't suck. uh,
I'll be happy
as
to see him in another league. I mean,
well,
um,
I think it's the necessary move for not like obviously he wants to stay and it's where he's comfortable, it's home for him. But it's almost like when Ronaldo made the move to what was it Juventus?
yeah.
Yeah, so it was just like a fresh start. Like now you get new competition and things of that nature. So I think it's a similar move in that aspect. It's different because he's going to a loaded team, but as a fan of that loaded team, it's hard to not get excited. And like you said, Messi was that guy to help you get indulged into soccer. When I was introduced to soccer, Messi and Neymar both play for Barcelona. They're my two favorite players. So I'm happy to see them on the same team again. And it just happens to be my favorite team. Uh, because now I'm starting to get more indulged into soccer now. I'm not a huge soccer fan, but I'm starting to get indulged more. And I think with Messi going there, it, it'll it'll be hard for me to miss any games that I could possibly watch. So I'm excited. They already made the addition of Sergio Ramos, which was a big addition. But then you go and add Messi, and now you have Messi, Mbappe, Neymar. I'm like, sheesh. I was already planning on getting a PSG Neymar jersey. I'm still, in the work. It's still in the works. But then I was gonna get Mbappe after, and then now that Messi's coming over, I gotta squeeze Messi in between. I gotta get Messi after I get Neymar, and then Mbappe can wait later.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, I was hoping he would have went to like uh Premier League, just so that he could kind of silence the people that said he would be able to compete at a high level
Yeah.
in the English league. Uh, so I would have liked to see that just for that sake alone, or maybe even see him go to Italy so we could see more Ronaldo face-offs again. But I'm happy. I'm happy for him. I definitely think PSG is easily now the favorite to win a lot of titles. So I'm happy for Messi ultimately. It sucks
Yeah.
as a Barca fan to see him go, but I'm happy because I know he's going to win a lot of titles and he's going to
All
score
right.
a lot of goals
All right.
and get
So
a lot more assists with Neymar and
all right. So you said you would have liked him to go elsewhere. And honestly, I didn't expect him to go to PSG. Like when the news dropped that he wasn't signing back with Barca, I was like PSG with the eye emoji, and I was just joking. But then you
Nah,
sent out, the post with Neymar, and I was like, oh, he's just trying to recruit him. But then the news dropped that he was actually signing with him. I'm like,
nah,
bro.
yeah, I kind of figured that's where he was going to go. It
But
was
I
too
mean,
easy.
well, yeah, I think the reason why he went there though is familiarity, and it was because him and Neymar are close. We even seen it at the end of I forget what event it was, but it was when Brazil and Argentina faced off, and Messi ended up winning. Just seeing them hug it in the end and be happy, and like Neymar be happy for Messi in that situation. It was just they seem like they're best friends, like the best of friends. So it made sense that you're leaving home, but you go somewhere where you have at least one person that you're familiar with, because that ultimately makes it feel more like home. Uh, and I think it's a perfect
Well,
fit.
he's got more than one person now. I mean,
Oh yeah,
I mean, you mentioned Mbappe, Neymar, Sergio Ramos, obviously, but another person that you know, it might be a little bit underrated, but Di Maria, that's huge because he's got connections to Argentina, and so them playing in Argentina together is another really big thing.
yep.
Because the familiarity with Neymar, obviously playing in the club together is huge, but also having somebody that you play with internationally is really big too. Because not only now are you going to be able to play with him on PSG and kind of build up that chemistry? But that's going to translate to better chemistry on the international side, which is somewhere that Messi struggled with until as of late when he finally won a title for Argentina. The chemistry between him and his team, and finding a way to work around how good Messi is. Almost that's the way it felt. But now you're able to kind of build chemistry year round with those two. So that's really big for Messi and Di Maria, but it's also really big for Argentina, and so their fans should be happy to see them playing side by side in the club.
See, I
Or
didn't know.
yeah,
I didn't know that, so I'm glad you shine some light on that. But it just makes even more sense why it's a familiar. It's another familiar face, so it
yeah,
feels more like home. So like you're leaving home to go somewhere that feels like home.
yeah, definitely.
So and we were talking about this before. Is like I was questioning because there's rumors shining that the coach might have like, be out soon. Like the new coach of PSG might not, return. But I think we're all pretty sure that he's returning.
Nah, you just got Messi, bro. You're not leaving.
You just got Messi, so
You're not trying to. You're trying to coach Messi, man. At least
oh
one
yeah,
season.
well at least. But I think it's definitely going to convince him to come back for sure. At least for as long as you possibly can, because the contract's for 2 years with a possible third year, and I think it's a perfect contract for Messi at his age, because let's say it doesn't work out in PSG, he can opt out after the second year and go elsewhere.
Go
Like
to
you said,
the
the Premier League, or just finish, or you can even go and play in the United States and just make that bread.
retiring
So,
the MLS, make that bread, play for New York, so I could go watch you play and root for you at the same time.
yeah, I mean that would be sweet. I mean, but I think the contract is perfect. The situation is perfect. I'm just excited as a PSG fan. So I got to get my jerseys. But the thing is, I can't just get the same jersey with their name on. I got to get a different jersey with for each
PSG
player.
got some good options. They got some nice jerseys.
Oh yeah, that's why I became a fan of them. Not only because Neymar was there, but I just love their jerseys. We're gonna switch over from football to football, and that's Carson Wentz. It was a big move in the offseason that he got traded from the Eagles to the Colts, going to go play with his old coach Frank Reich. So it's funny because when it got announced that he was out 5 to 12 weeks, our friend Kenny, you know, shout out to him. His contributions to the show. He's an Eagles fan, and he was like, glad we don't gotta put up with this anymore. And I was like, breaking news, you still gotta put up with it for at least one more year, because you got the trade is dependent on his health, his durability. Like they get a first round pick, I believe, if he plays 70% of the games this season, and if he doesn't, they get a second round pick. And when I told him that, he was like, "Who the fuck decided to make that trade?"
I
they,
knew he wasn't playing 70% of those games.
so that
Oh man.
that alone was hilarious, but that was the only way that they were gonna get like have a chance to get a first
No,
round pick.
you're
They
right.
they
Yeah,
wanted a first round pick, and that was the only way they were gonna have a chance to get one. So it sucks for Carson Wentz, because I thought he was gonna bounce back. I still think he can when he finishes like getting healthy and everything like that. But this year just might not be the year. Maybe they get to next year with him. But if they want to stay competitive while he's gone, right? Phillip Rivers, although he's coaching high school now, high school football, he came out and he said like he's not ruling out an NFL return. Could it be because of the Carson Wentz injury? Who knows? I mean, he was the starting quarterback of the Colts last season, right?
Mhm.
So there's the familiarity. He knows the system, but who would be a better temporary replacement for the Colts? Would it be Phil Rivers, who was the starter last year, or would it be someone else who's familiar with the system and could be easily acquired for cheap? And that person I'm speaking of is Nick Foles,
Yeah.
who is now currently the third string quarterback over in Chicago.
Um. So it's weird because there's familiarity with Phillip Rivers. Um. Obviously, having him play for the Colts last year, and instinctively, I would say Phillip Rivers because of that and because he's better. In my opinion, he's the better quarterback. Yeah, he did have the turnover issues last year when he played for the Colts. Um, so that's also big. But if we're talking right now, who would be the best option? It might just be Nick Foles. Because although he doesn't have the familiarity with the Colts, he has the familiarity with Frank Wright. That's something that he brought up himself. He said he was perfectly capable of winning a Super Bowl with me at the helm. Obviously, Carson Wentz kind of got them there, but Nick Foles had to, you know, do the hard part really, which was win the playoff games. So there's familiarity there with Frank Reich. He knows how to use Nick Foles' talents. So he might just be better equipped to be in that system. Like I said, Phillip Rivers instinctively, all time overall, might be the better quarterback, but I think he's well past his time. It was long overdue, in my opinion, for him to retire. Obviously, like I said, the turnover problems, all that. I just think it'd be better for them to pursue a different option, a newer option, especially like we said, Frank Reich has the ability to really use Nick Foles to his best ability and use all his talents, and put him in the best position to win. Use his strengths rather than, put him in a position to do things that he knows he can't do, because we saw him do that in Philly. And so I think it's perfectly, plausible that he does it in Indianapolis. And so with that, I think it's easily Nick Foles.
Uh, who? So, so this one. So let me start it off like this. The first half of the season, they're gonna have a losing record, regardless of who's their quarterback. Not because they're missing Carson Wentz, but if you look at their schedule, they have the hardest first half schedule in the NFL, in my opinion. The second half schedule is probably one of the easiest. But from what I've seen from this schedule, they play the Seahawks, they play the Rams, they play the Dolphins, they play a bunch of tough teams.
Yeah.
So I think they're gonna have a losing record regardless. It was to the point where I showed a Colts fan the schedule and I was like, you guys are gonna how many wins do you think you're gonna have in the first half? And he was like, he looked at it, he was like, loss, loss, loss. So
At least he was honest.
I I mean he was hesitant on the third one, but he's like what the fuck? Like like who made our schedule? So that's that. But yeah, the better player or the better option right now would be Nick Foles. I think he has more left in the tank, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
However, I think the better move would be Phillip Rivers because you're not trading any assets away. You would be acquiring them for probably like vets minimum or whatever that possibly could be. But the reason why I say that is we know what happened in Philly with the Carson Wentz, like especially after the Super Bowl run and the fact that they had made it. They had a Nick Foles statue outside of the stadium. So every time he would go to work, he'd see a Nick Foles statue. And every time he performed bad, they were like, "Oh, you should have kept Nick Foles. You should have kept Nick Foles." And he had to deal with that drama. You acquired Nick Foles, like trading him to Indianapolis was for a fresh start and help him get his career rejuvenated again. So acquiring Nick Foles, you're going back to square one. And it was more of a mental thing, in my opinion, with Carson Wentz than anything. And you acquire Nick Foles, and he starts. Let's say Nick Foles plays well. Do we have a quarterback controversy on our hand? More than likely not, but
I don't still think so.
but from a mental standpoint, from a competitive standpoint, Carson Wentz might feel defeated before he even steps on the field. So the best decision would just keep your distance from Nick Foles and just rock with Wentz and just show that you're committed to him. Whether that means bring Phillip Rivers back temporarily for a season just to be a backup once it returns, or just be a starter while he's out. Hey, go ahead. If not, you invested in young players in the draft, so
Yeah.
just stay there, rock with them, or you can just wait out and see who gets released. Remember, there's cuts haven't happened yet. Preseason is just beginning. So once cuts get made, someone unexpected might get cut, and you might be able to scoop them up for off waivers or something. So, hey, best bet in my opinion is just keep your distance, social distance from Nick Foles, bro. 6 feet,
So
six
so
feet.
basically what you're saying though is that you should get Phillip Rivers so that you can save Carson Wentz's feelings.
Yes. Like from a franchise standpoint, the better decision is Nick Foles. But
Yeah, I get you.
but you also invested a lot in
Oh,
Carson
definitely.
Wentz.
Yep.
and a lot of changing sceneries was a lot to do with his feelings. And so yes, you want to save his feelings. NBA free agency started. The offseason has begun. Summer League is back at it again. So before we get started, I just want to say that your boy's a happy camper. The one move that I wanted happened, and that was Carmelo Anthony to the Lakers. That's all. That's all I want to say.
Okay.
But we're gonna talk about winners and losers of NBA free agency thus far.
There's a lot of winners. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of teams that got really good. I was just talking to my brother, or my brother-in-law, but my brother. That's my brother. Uh, I was talking to my brother, the other day, and we were talking about the league is getting really good, man, all around. It's not even just one or two teams. Like obviously the Lakers, they're a winner. They got a ton of guys. They got Melo, they got Westbrook, they got Trevor Ariza, they got Wayne Ellington. I mean, the list goes on. They got a good amount of guys. We're starting to see how their roster shaping up for next season. So obviously they're a winner. But you also got the Knicks, newly acquired Kemba Walker with their already solid young core. I mean, you got Kemba Walker. His, his backup is Derrick Rose, who was going off last year. You got Julius Randle. You got
Mm-hmm.
Reggie Bullock. I'm pretty sure they still have.
No,
You got
I think he loves it. I think he left.
okay. So no
But
longer Reggie Bullock. We got R.J. Barrett. I mean, the
mm-hmm.
list goes on as well for them. Then you got the Chicago Bulls. I mean, it's just like there's a lot of winners. So I mean, that's really my list of winners. I mean, really, if we're to talk about winners, I mean the fans. We're the winners. I'm being honest. I mean, um, as much as I'd like to see the Yankees, Lakers prosper, Lakers doing good things, big things that are gonna, make us title hopefuls. Um, I also do like to see the NBA get better. It's not just about like I want the Lakers to have everybody. And obviously as a Lakers fan, it's always like, well, Lakers gonna get this guy, Lakers gonna get this guy. That's great, and as much as I love to hear it and see it, 100%. Like I'm not complaining, but it is cool when you see the whole league kind of shaping out and as a whole getting really better because it makes it more fun to watch. It keeps your eyes glued to the TV. It makes it more challenging for your team. Like as much as you like to win titles, you don't want your team to have a cakewalk to the title. Because it just doesn't. Not that not that it's not a real championship. Not that there's any type of asterisk next to it. You're still the best
Yeah.
team, and ultimately it's about being the best team. But you do like to see when your team has to, kind of fight for it. And it just makes it that much sweeter, knowing not only were we the best team, but uh, we were the best team out of a lot of really not just good teams, but great teams. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm really excited for the NBA season as a whole and as a Lakers fan.
So your fan. So the fans of the winners are your
Every
winners.
everyone's a winner
All
for
right.
the fans, the Bulls,
Well,
the Lakers,
well,
and
I
the
agree with you.
Knicks.
I agree with you. And it's funny that you mentioned uh, Kemba Walker to the Knicks because Kemba is my favorite player in the league right now. With Kobe Bryant no longer playing. Uh, but he got a bad rap in Boston. Part of it was acceptable because he didn't show up in the playoffs, but Boston fans are impatient, and I was happy as hell that he got moved. Although I wasn't happy that it was the Thunder, I was like, hey, Chris Paul, something similar happened to Chris Paul, So, and look how that turned out for him. So I was like, all right, it'll work out. Like he's gonna show once he leaves Boston, he'll show that he still got it. And then he got bought out and he went to the Knicks, and I was like, I'm so happy for this guy because if you don't know this man's track record in MSG, he loves breaking ankles.
Kemba Walker, step back,
Cardi,
Walker.
cardiac Kemba likes to come out in MSG, and I love the fact that it's Derrick Rose is there because it's a veteran leader who is dealing with a similar injury to him with in regards to his knee. A lot of people are questioning that the health of his knee. Derrick Rose dealt with multiple knee injuries, and he's probably playing the best ball of his career overall. Like he's not playing MVP Derrick Rose level, but as an overall player, he's shooting the ball probably the best of his career. He's dealing with this. He's coming off of dealing with multiple knee injuries, so he can as someone that's been there, he can always give advice to Kemba coming off of these knee injuries that he has. So I'm happy about the move. I don't think the Knicks are done. I think they're going to go out and make a trade for another player, maybe a Miles Turner. And I think if they make trade for Miles Turner, I think that'll be the move to get them over because you get Kemba, Miles Turner, you got Julius Randle, so that'll be nice. So, but for my winner, I think the most improved team this offseason thus far is by far, well, not by far. There's multiple teams. There's two teams in particular, but I think the team that had the best offseason thus far is the Chicago Bulls. You went out, so you could say the winner's like Levine. You could say the winner's the Bulls. It's all up to you. It's however you take this. But Zach Levine was pretty much saying like he needed help. Like he's not he was getting tired of carrying the team. He was on like offensively he can't do it himself. And although had a good start to the season last year and they were in the playoff picture, it seemed like they're they died out and they didn't end up making the playoffs. So they went out and got him some help. Offensively, defensively, doesn't matter. They went and got Vooch at the deadline, so they still got Vooch, and that was nice. But then you go out and you get Lonzo Ball, and I'm like, that's a great acquisition because Lonzo literally does everything that you can ask for in a point guard. Uh, some might question his shooting ability, but he shot the best of his career last year with the Pelicans, right? So now you have if he continues that, it's even better because he's going to help offensively, but he's one of the best passers in the league. He's one of the best defensive point guards in the league, and he's one of the best rebounding point guards in the league. So that helps alleviate the offensive duties of Zach LaVine because now Ball is responsible for facilitating the offense, and Zach LaVine could play more off ball. So I thought they were done, and then they go out and get Alex Caruso. Broke my heart. Broke my heart. But the dude is gonna help defensively. That's his specialty is defense. And he could hit a three here and there. He's not a terrible 3-point shooter. Just put him in the corner, and he's a reliant player. Then you thought they were done, but no. DeMar DeRozan comes back to the Eastern Conference, and he's a bucket. Regardless if you think he can't shoot, he's a bucket. He's a mid-range specialist, and yes, he's not a 3-point shooter, but he literally does it all. He's gonna get a bucket. You need someone to create a shot, give him the ball. And we've seen what he did with the Raptors in the Eastern Conference. So I'm excited to see what the Bulls do this upcoming season because they still have Kobe White. So it's gonna be very interesting. And that's the main reason why we put out the poll that we did for poll of the week. Who do you believe in more, the Knicks or the Bulls next season? Or like who's going to make it further? So if you haven't answered that question yet, go to our Instagram, go to our Facebook, and comment
So
your answer.
I will say this off top. For me, it's definitely the Bulls. But I also want to say very quickly, um, and you kind of mentioned it, and I'm not saying that's you saying it, but the 3-point game. I get it. Steph Curry changed the game. You know, the three is nearly everything now. I get it. You need 3-point shooters to succeed, but like, people don't get it. Like the three isn't everything.
Yeah,
DeMar DeRozan doesn't have the nicest 3-point shot in the NBA, but like you said, he's a bucket. Like there are plenty of guys in the league that don't have a 3-point shot that can get buckets. Like don't let this new league fool you. Like you need to be the best 3-point shooting team to win a championship. It's not the case. Like I get
yeah,
it. The game is changing. The game is relying more on threes. Like I get that, but just because a team isn't stacked with guys who are shooting 42% from the field and scoring 25 points per game or from three and scoring 25 points per game doesn't mean they're not going to win games, doesn't mean they're not going to be capable of winning championships. Like I'm tired of this narrative. And again, like I said, I'm not saying this you saying because I know it's not you saying it, but people pretending like you need just a stacked roster of 3-point shooters to win games, and it's just not the case. So this
Like,
narrative needs to
yeah,
stop.
we're not saying you don't need 3-point shooting, but you don't. Everything doesn't revolve 3-point. Need to be
Not at
involved
all.
3-point shooting. You need to change it up because if you're predictable, then it's gonna be easier for you to defend. I mean, you can't live and die by the three. I mean, you
Yeah,
can, but there's a good chance that you're going to lose a lot of games because you're not hitting your 3 pointers.
yeah.
But
And
what before you? Sorry to
no,
cut you off.
you no, go ahead, go ahead.
But prime example of why you don't need 3-point shooting: the Bucks just won the NBA Finals, and in the playoffs they weren't even close to being the best 3-point shooting team, but they got the job done. Why? Because they did a little bit of everything. They
Yeah,
don't they did what was necessary to win the games. They didn't like if they needed a three, they hit a three, but they weren't the best 3-point shooter. If anything, the Suns were a better 3-point shooting team than the Bucks were. But the
yeah.
Bucks, won in six. They won four in a row at that to finish it off. But
No, and the only reason I say that is because I feel like it's like this new narrative that people are starting to create in the
mhm.
NBA around the NBA, and it's just like it's a tired narrative already, and it just started. Like, cut it out. Like, you know what I mean? It's everybody's like, oh, who's gonna like, and it's not even just about the Lakers, but it's just in general. I've seen it about the Lakers, like, oh, who's gonna stop them? It's like, oh, the 3-point line. Like, you have three superstars, and you're telling me you think that they're gonna lose games because they don't have the best 3-point shooting? And I mean, they did surround themselves with some good 3-point shooters, for good reason. Obviously, they're not the greatest 3-point shooters, but they're going to be fine. Like, they were going to be fine regardless. You have three of the best players in the world, and you're
yeah.
telling me that you think that these guys are going to struggle winning games because they can't shoot threes? Like, that's not going
Uh,
to happen.
all right. So being that you mentioned it, and being that we haven't talked about it on the podcast yet, I want to I've been on record of saying this off air, but I'll say it here. As a Laker fan, the Russell Westbrook move it scares me more than it excites me, right? It's still a great acquisition. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Russell Westbrook, although he doesn't raise our ceiling, he raises our floor. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so
It's a
he
good way to
raises
put
our
it.
floor. Yeah, he raises our floor. So we're gonna be good. We're gonna be solid regardless,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Uh, the players that we traded away, the three players are three role players, and you're getting a superstar in return. Those three role players are not even close to being as talented as Russell Westbrook as combined. So
Yeah.
like Russell Westbrook does everything that they do, if not better.
It's Mr.
Like
Triple Double. Like,
yeah,
period,
so
man. That's
so
it.
but the move does scare me more than it excites me. Why? Because it's not an ideal fit. He doesn't really fill the needs or any of the needs that we necessarily had. You know what I mean? However, everything he does, like with bringing his tenacity, his energy, giving his 110% all the fucking time, like he might not be the most efficient shooter, but it's going to raise the floor because it'll allow AD and Bron to take breaks, whether they're playing or they're like out for a certain amount of days. Because Russ is as durable as he is, he's just that type of guy, and it's going to show how great Russ is. Is he going to be able to take a back seat and accept his role? Because he is the third. He is the third option here. There's no
Yeah.
question. But we've seen great players, have to compromise. Like look when LeBron went to Miami, it didn't work out right away because D Wade and LeBron were both alphas and they were both trying to be, option one, like 1A, 1B. Didn't work out that way. But when Wade decided to accept his role and be not, number two is when they succeeded. You know what I mean? So, the same thing when KD went to Golden State. Steph took that back seat.
Yeah.
Like you need a compromise to win. So
Yeah.
this Russ realizes that this is his last chance or his best option to win a chip. So we're going to see how great of a player he is. We know how talented he is, but how
Yeah.
great of a player he is, like, does he make that compromise? I'm not worried because I think they'll figure it out. They're great players.
Oh, definitely.
But the Russ move raises our floor more than anything. Now, in terms of how high our ceiling is, all depends on how adaptable like he is to
Yeah.
the situation. But I'm not worried about it. It still scares me because I don't know how it's going to work. It's not an
Yeah.
ideal fit, but
But I mean,
it is exciting to have a player of his caliber on your team
definitely.
because I love his tenacity. I love that you could be friends off the court, but he's coming for your neck regardless of who you are
Mhm.
when he steps on the court.
No, I agree, and I mean, even in the sense that you mentioned, when LeBron and AD aren't on the court, perfect opportunity because that's like Russ is somebody that needs the ball in his hands, and for that reason, that's why he kind of scares you, and at the same time scares me. Somebody that needs the ball in his hands, somebody that wants the ball in his hands, and so like you said, I completely agree with that sentiment that not, I mean, obviously, like I said, it's Russ. You seeing a guy like Russ on your team, of course, it's amazing, but it does worry you a little bit because, um, at the end of the day, Russ could be almost like what we were talking about with Chris Middleton. He might not be the best player on the floor, but you might only go as far as his game is going to take you. And so it's similar situations with Russ. Like, obviously, we got AD there. Obviously, we got LeBron there. So maybe he's not necessarily the best player on the floor at any given moment, but he might be the reason we either win a championship or we don't. And so that's kind of why he scares you, a Lakers fan. But regardless, now you have three guys. You have options to have Russ on the floor with maybe like a Melo. You can have like a
Hmm.
two-unit thing where obviously
And they
at
have
some
chemistry. They played in
obvious,
OKC.
100%. Obviously, at some points you're gonna have games where they're all on the floor, or where three of them are on the floor. But in the moments where you're kind of splitting them up and splitting minutes, and you got LeBron and AD playing together, then you got Westbrook and Melo playing together, or you got AD and Westbrook and LeBron and Melo. And so there's different ways you can do it, and I think ultimately it'll work. Ultimately, they'll figure it out. They're all not only really good players, but really smart players. They have a great, a really an amazing coach that is more than capable of figuring out, how to make that
Yeah.
work. So
So
I'm not too worried about it. But
so
I get where you're coming from,
yeah,
100%.
and I think it's gonna work because he's back home. Like
Yeah,
he's from California. He played at UCLA. Now he's playing for the Lakers. Like he knows it's his best opportunity, his last chance to win a ring. He knows he's back home, so he's gonna want to put on a show and represent uh for his people. But he's also never been on a team with a winner like LeBron. Like look at how AD's game changed when he went to the Lakers. Like yeah, he was
yeah,
already a great player, but LeBron, mentoring him and things like that nature. AD even said it. It was like it was to a certain point where LeBron didn't even have to talk to him anymore. Like he
yeah,
already knew what he had to do. Like with Russ struggled in Houston because he wasn't the primary ball handler. Like he wanted to be, the primary ball handler. But that was James Harden. Like yeah,
yeah,
they're boys, but James Harden, what has he won?
yeah.
Like LeBron's the primary ball handler, and that's the only way that this team's going to succeed.
Yeah.
Russ can be
And
the secondary ball handler and give
yeah,
LeBron some breaks, but if you're gonna, take a backseat to anybody, it'll be to LeBron. Like
100%.
LeBron's gonna lead you to the promised land if you just, follow suit.
Yeah. And I mean, in the same sense too, kind of how we were talking about primary ball handlers. I mean, we seen LeBron even try to take a back seat last season.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to see we seen him try to let guys like Dennis Schroeder kind of be a primary ball handler at times and try to make that work. You know, to try and make it a better situation for the Lakers. He was trying to let him develop as a primary ball handler, as a starting point guard, so that he could be that guy the Lakers needed. And he wasn't. I think the fact that now you have Westbrook, a guy who can be a primary ball handler, um, as much as like we were saying, you want him to take a backseat to LeBron. In the same sense, now you do feel a little bit more comfortable in somebody other than LeBron being a primary ball handler because Russell Westbrook is capable of doing what we hoped Dennis Schroeder could do, or at least what we needed him to do when LeBron and AD were out and he was incapable of doing. I think it definitely helps the Lakers more than it hurts, but it does leave a little bit of worry in the minds
Exactly,
when you think of, you know, how much he could hurt your team at the same time. So,
for sure.
but I think they'll be
But
fine.
I agree 100%. But now that we, put that on record, let's finish the episode by giving our losers of free agency this far. So I guess I'll start because you just
Oh,
finished talking about
yep, yep, yep.
Westbrook. Um, I have two, but it was more just personal one, and then obviously the clear cut one. So my
Okay.
personal one is Lakers fans. We lost our fan favorite, the Caruso and Alex Caruso,
Man, why you had
and
to bring that up, man?
and and, and I think like all jokes aside, I really do think it was a big blow to our team because
No, yeah,
defensively
100%.
he what he supplied is going to be dearly missed. Offensively, he wasn't the best offensive player, but he showed up when you needed him most. And what I loved about him is he's always in that fourth quarter closing lineup because we could depend on him the most. And for the amount of money that the Bulls signed him for, we could have signed him back because from what I've heard, is once the Bulls gave him the offer sheet, he went to the Lakers and told them to see what they could do, and the Lakers didn't even bother like trying.
Yeah,
Uh, and he's only getting paid like 9.5 million, which we could have still managed to sign him and bring back Taylor Horton Tucker and all these other guys. So
that's that sleeper right there, Taylor Horn Tucker. That's my
so
guy.
I think that was my first loser, is just us Lakers fans for that particular move. I
No,
don't. But besides that, I think we're happy campers. But
no
just for
doubt.
that move, because he's a fan favorite, it breaks all of our hearts.
I do want
Now,
to say before you continue with your
yeah,
actual loser. I mean, for anybody that doesn't isn't familiar with Alex Caruso or isn't familiar with like the actual play of Alex Caruso and just knows him as a meme and thinks that it's not an actual loss for the Lakers
no,
uh
he's an elite defender.
is what people would call casual. Um, he's definitely a huge loss. And in the same sense of why I felt a huge loss when the Lakers lost Rondo after their championship year. It's not even necessarily in the sense that he's going to fill up the stat sheet because he doesn't. I mean, it was the proof is in the pudding. I'm pretty sure the guy averaged maybe 9 points a game, which isn't bad for a role player. It's not a bad at all, especially when you have the team that you do. You don't
Mhm.
really need him to do much else other than put up 10 to 15 points, maybe. 15 is probably stretching it. But it was things that he did off the stat sheet that uh, really showed up in games. And really what Lakers fans saw in him because watching the games day in and day out, you see a guy who, like Russell Westbrook, and that you mentioned it earlier, similar to Russell Westbrook, he might not have the talent, but he brings the passion, he brings the tenacity, he plays every play 110%. When you're on the offensive side of the ball, you really have to be aware of where Alex Caruso is, because almost at any point he could be coming up behind you trying to rip you, or just the level of tenacity he plays on the game, how much effort he puts into the game is the difference between you know a good amount of wins and losses. Like if we're going by wins above replacement, I mean obviously I don't know if that's even a basketball stat. I know that's a baseball stat, but I don't know if it's a basketball stat. But if I'm saying, if we were to break it down in that kind of stat, like a wins above replacement or like a you know win shares type of thing, like I think his would be pretty high because he is that type of player that can decide games just based off how he plays, and not only just throughout the whole game, but like you said, down the stretch in key moments. There's a reason that he was in games late. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that's because he brought that energy that you needed in those late games. He tired other teams out just based off how much of a menace he was to them on the defensive side of the ball and on the offensive side of the ball because like we said, he wasn't always scoring, but he's more than capable of facilitating. He knows how to move around without the ball. He knows he's a great player,
Yeah,
regardless of what his
he's
stats say.
he's a great role player. He accepts his
100%.
role, and he takes on the challenges of defending the best perimeter player on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
He's an elite defender, and he can easily make an all defensive
I,
team.
hey, I was
He like
disappointed when he didn't make at least third team last year.
Yeah, like he has a chance to make a defensive all defensive team, and hopefully he continues in Chicago, and Chicago accepts him like the Los Angeles Lakers fans
Definitely.
accepted him because he is an exciting player to watch, and he is a fan favorite. He's one guy that you can root for. Why? Because he's relatable. Like he you look at him and you're like he looks like the guy that I live next to. Like he's that relatable.
Yeah, that,
But he definitely earned his way to this contract. So although we're heartbroken for the fact that he left, we're happy for him that he went and got his money. The dude earned his way
def.
up from the G League, got to the Lakers, made on a two-way contract, made a name for himself, got himself some minutes. Then, he was a big part of the championship team, and now he finally got his money. So, although it's
Def.
not with the Yankees, you got to be happy for the guy. Now, for my
Lakers.
actual loser,
I said the same thing.
what?
No, it's funny because you said Yankees and you meant Lakers, and I did that literally a couple minutes ago.
Oh, damn, my bad. At least you corrected me.
No, it's funny because I was like, I literally just did the same thing. I don't know how.
Well, my actual loser has got to be the Boston Celtics.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. I thought you were going to take mine, but that's a great one.
There were a bunch of point guards on the market, and they clearly in the market for a point guard, and they literally let every team sweep up the point guard market, and now they're down to convincing Dennis Schroeder to go to Boston. Um, it
Sign and
wouldn't be
trade. Yeah,
it, it, it
yeah,
wouldn't be a bad move. Like Dennis Schroeder to Boston wouldn't be a bad move. What would be a bad move is if they give him the bag. If they give him the bag, that's the problem. Because with
definitely.
Dennis Schroeder for us, what was the issue was that once we traded for him, he basically demanded me to be a starter. Because should he have accepted the role to come off the bench, I think that was better suited for our team. But the fact that he was demanding to be a starter is the issue, right? But now the Celtics have no other options because if not, you're either going to start Chris Dunn, who isn't a starting point guard in the league. You're going to start Marcus Smart, who you definitely don't want starting because his shot selection is terrible, and but he brings his defensive side of the ball is much needed, which is why they have started him at
Definitely.
shooting guard. But Dennis Schroeder, he's literally the best option because if they don't get Dennis Schroeder, who do they get? But the best move for them is to do a sign and trade. But now, who do you trade away? But it's not only the point guard situation why they're a loser. Uh, it's because it's also the center position. They needed bigs, right? They went out and got Al Horford in the Kemba trade, but they also got Moses Brown, which was a steal. They stole. It was a money heist. But then you go ahead and you trade Moses Brown to get Josh Richardson. Yeah, you got another center coming from Atlanta in the Chris Dunn trade. Maybe they're more willing to get rid of Marcus Smart because they got Chris Dunn. Who knows? But he doesn't have the potential that Moses Brown had. I don't care what anyone says. Like you should, by all means, you should have kept Moses Brown. If anything, try to trade Robert Williams, whose contract's up this offseason and he's gonna get a bag. Like trade him away, and so you don't have to deal with that later in the season by the trade deadline. You know what I mean? And then
Definitely.
and then they went out, and the move they make at center in free agency is go ahead and get a familiar face as Ennis Canner. Didn't work out the first time. What makes you think it's gonna work out the second time? Like that's what I'm saying. I don't know what they're doing. Like I like the move about getting Chris Dunn and Josh Richardson, but the fact that you had Moses Brown right there, you could have kept him. Like especially because not a lot of players are signing up to sign with you guys. Like when you
No,
have
yeah.
a player with potential, especially a big, which you've needed for some time, you keep him and you try to develop him. But no, they just decided to get rid of him like that. So
No, yeah.
that's why they're my loser.
I thought nobody wanted to play for the Knicks, but they turned that narrative around quicker than the Celtics are able to, and that's kind of a surprise to me. But hey, man, they're definitely a loser. But with that being said, my loser um is the Los Angeles Clippers.
Ooh, so that's not who I thought you were going with. But
Okay,
okay,
so yeah,
continue.
my loser is the Los Angeles Clippers. And it's pretty simple for me. Kawhi Leonard hurt. Obviously, you guys, I mean, really, they're not living up to any expectations. They
Mhm.
got Paul George and they got Kawhi Leonard together, and self-proclaimed best team in LA. We're gonna win titles. We're gonna bring titles to the Clippers. We're gonna be the best team in LA. We're no longer the little brother, and they've done nothing. I mean, they've made a playoff, one playoff run, really technically, because they got blasted the year before by a team that really everybody thought they already were gonna beat. They had them handled, and then got the comeback completed on them. So, but with that being said, like the Clippers, they got Paul George and Kawhi together to win championships, and they haven't done that, and they also haven't gotten better either. They literally have done nothing in free agency yet. So they have the same exact roster um, that hasn't won anything yet, while every other team that's a champion hopeful or has won a championship in the last few years has only gotten a lot better. On top of the fact that there are reports that Kawhi Leonard, or not that there are currently reports, but have been reports of him possibly moving again or wanting out again.
Oh no,
Um,
he resigned with them
no, okay, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But there
because
was
he opted
reports of
out. He opted
okay,
out.
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just the fact that you haven't, bolstered down that lineup, that you haven't reinforced that lineup, that you haven't gotten players to kind of surround Paul George and Kawhi Leonard with, and just remain with the same people who have failed to do the job over and over again, while everybody else has just gotten better. I don't know how you expect to win with that. I don't know how that, in
Yeah.
your eyes, is a championship recipe, because in my opinion it's not even close. I mean, they're
I
further away from winning than they were last year and even the year before.
Yeah, well, I don't think Kawhi is going to play this year because due to his most recent injury. But
Okay.
they went out and got Justice Winslow, which isn't a bad player. He's been a solid role player for them. They resigned Reggie Jackson, which played big for them down the
Yeah.
stretch last year. Uh, but they haven't made that big splash to like move the needle. And I've read stuff on possibly them, like it's not rumors that they'll go out to get them, but it's like possible moves that they could make to kind of try to move the needle.
Yeah.
And one move was John Wall. He's not it wouldn't be the greatest move, but it wouldn't be the worst move either. I mean, the worst part about that would be taking on his contract. But
Definitely.
you're adding a player that has the potential to move the needle, and
Yeah.
you're adding it to Paul George, Reggie Jackson, uh, and right now, and DeMarcus
Yeah.
Cousins if he stays. But and I think they retain Ibaka, so that would be nice. But when Kawhi comes back, it would be even better. But
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to pull the trigger because then they would have to trade a lot of the pieces that they got, uh, which would be like Beverly and a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
So I don't think they make that move, but they do need to make a splash. And
The hundred
so
percent.
I agree with you, especially with the expectations that they have.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, the expectations are so high, and like you have two superstar players. Don't get me wrong, but like I said, all these teams are getting better, and two superstars seems like it's not enough now, because now you
Mm-hmm.
have all these teams that now somehow out of nowhere have three. You know what I mean? Like, and they're not only they have three superstars, but then they're starting to bolster the lineups with players who complement those players. So, for me, I just feel like they really need to start making moves now. And obviously, there are some plans. There's some plans in motion, like you just mentioned, but those haven't come to fruition. And so, as of right now, with the roster that they have, and free agency currently, they have to be one of the bigger losers for me, because when you're a championship hopeful like that, and you see all these teams around you getting better, you can't remain stagnant. It's the same thing that we just talked about in baseball. It's the same thing we just talked about with the Red Sox. The same thing we talk about with the Padres. You can't be comfortable when you see everybody around you getting better. If you want to compete, that means that you also have to get better, and they haven't.
I have some honorable mentions here. I have two
Yes, sir.
honorable mentions, and the first one that's seems to be staying stagnant is the Portland Trailblazers.
Okay.
So there was rumors that Dame wanted out, and he was about to, request a trade, but then he came out and said no, but they need to make moves because the way they currently are, they have they're not a championship roster, right? But what moves have they made?
None.
And that's where I'm getting to right now, right? They haven't made any, and that ultimately makes them a loser because they went out and got they went out and re-signed Tony Snell, not Tony Snell. They went out and re-signed Norman Powell, solid role player, nothing wrong with that. But then you go out and get Cody Zeller, Tony Snell, and Ben McLemore. That's not moving the needle. That's not winning you anything. So they need to do better on that aspect, especially to satisfy Dame. I think the way they're moving, it might encourage him to actually put in that trade request and get traded. And then they'll have to build around CJ McCollum at that point. And then the other one is the Philadelphia 76ers. First off, I want to talk about the move that they made for Andre Drummond. They went out and signed Andre Drummond. First off, him and Embiid don't get along. They have a beef. So that's why they made a meme out of them dapping up when he arrived to the facility.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's not even a fit. Like, I don't understand the signing. It's not a fit because Drummond wants to be a starter. He complained about being benched in with the Lakers. So he wants to be a starter. So how do they fit in a starting lineup together? They don't. Because you're talking about getting rid of Ben Simmons because he can't shoot, but then you go and get another player who can't shoot. Like, Drummond can't shoot.
Yeah.
And like
Drummond can barely dunk. He's soft.
So what are you gonna do? Put Drummond at the 5 and Embiid at the 4? It doesn't work out. It didn't even work out with Horford with Embiid. So just doesn't work. Then they're over here demanding the world for Ben Simmons as if no one watched the playoffs. Like they made it seem like, oh, guys, we're the only ones who watch the playoffs. No one else watched the playoffs. So let's demand literally everything from all these teams that are interested in Ben Simmons. And they have gotten no bites because of their demands, which is ridiculous. Not saying that he's not a good player and they shouldn't get anything for him, but the amount that they're asking for is ridiculous.
So
then you get to the point where he's cut off all ties, like communication ties. Like they haven't communicated to him in months. Like he doesn't want to return their phone calls, nothing. He hasn't even got back to Joel Embiid. And he's over here demanding trades to the Warriors, which I think is probably his best fit. But I think he said the Lakers or the Clippers or just LA in general.
Yeah, down to play for LA, down to play. Yeah, I saw a couple teams as well.
Yeah, but Golden State is his number one option. He's not interested in going to Portland. But guess what? Sorry to be the breaker of bad news. Sixers don't give a shit. They don't. You don't have a no trade clause. They could trade you anywhere they fucking want. And
they're gonna trade wherever they can get somebody.
That's what I don't understand is like you're trying to get in contact with them. You're clearly not going to bring them back. So just trade them. You don't have to listen to like, hey, where do you want to go? Like, no, just trade them for the best package you possibly can get. Like, stop worrying about the demands that you're going to get. Just trade them to a team that offers you the best offer. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I thought Bogdan and a first round pick from the Pacers was a solid return. I mean, it's not the best return, but Malcolm Brogdon is an underrated player. Like that would have been a solid. That would have did them a solid. Like they're just losers on a bunch of fronts. But speaking of the Blazers and the Sixers, a trade might be in the works between the two. And I'm not saying for CJ because CJ McCollum would be a nice fit in Philly, and especially if you can get Ben Simmons in return, I think that might change things. But it's not gonna convince Dame to it's fixed. But Dame might be going to Philly. So you trade Ben Simmons, do a package around Ben Simmons for Dame because they're demanding a lot for Ben Simmons. So you get Dame in return. Now you have to give up stuff.
If you give up Dame in return for Ben Simmons, now you're getting other players and picks.
Yeah. So then now the Blazers just hit the reset button essentially and build around CJ McCollum and Ben Simmons with Chauncey Billups. Not a bad rebuild. they can turn things around. But the way the types of moves they're making, they're not trying to win now. So
Yeah.
that could just be a start with Dame getting Dame from on the Sixers. That's a win now move. But I just still don't understand the Drummond move unless he comes
Yeah.
off the bench. But that's something that both teams could use at the moment in terms of where they stand in like if they're win now or rebuilding. But that could be a possible move in the brewing.
There's plenty of time left for a lot of these teams to keep going, make some moves. Obviously, the ones we were just talking about um, need to start moving sooner rather than later before things start drying up for them. But with that being said, I don't know if you have any more to say on the matter.
Oh, not in the matter, but just go check out our breakdowns. I
The
dropped two already, two NFL divisional breakdowns. Javon got some
Yep,
some
I got some
breakdowns
coming
brewing.
soon. I got
Yep.
some
So
brewing.
it's,
I got some
just
coming soon.
stay tuned. That's all.
So stay tuned for those. But with that being said, that is the end of the episode. We hope you guys enjoyed our takes on a few of the major sports in the world. There's a lot of exciting things. Obviously, there's a off season for a few sports right now, but there's still a lot of moving parts going on. A lot going on. So uh, we really enjoyed talking about it today. I speak for myself, but I'm sure Devin did, obviously. Um, but yeah, with that being said, that's the end of today's episode. As always, we appreciate you guys for watching. Uh, Also, as always, like, follow, subscribe, leave us some comments, leave us some of your takes about what we talk about. Go show some love on our Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. Uh, you know, we appreciate you guys following along for however long you guys have been watching us or listening to us, supporting us. We always appreciate the support. And go check out, as always, go check out our guys at Expansion Pack Podcast. Go watch their shit. They're funny as hell. If you like video games, if you like, anything really that has to do with, video games, they sometimes talk about movies and things like that. Things that kind of correlate with that, like, um, you know that
Gaming world.
that gaming world. So go watch them. You know, just go show some support for local talents. You know what I mean? So we appreciate it. Devin, anything you got to say?
Now, I mean, we got some love on my NFC South breakdown. A Panthers fan was coming for me because I said that they were coming in last place in the division. Although I did say they had potential, they could finish anywhere as high as second place in the division. It wasn't enough for
It
him.
wasn't good enough for him.
No, but I enjoyed it. Why? Because that's what we've been asking for, and we finally got
Def,
it. Like I said at the end of my NFC East breakdown, I'm sure there's people out there that disagree with me, but let me know. I'm here
he really
for the debate.
he really wouldn't have liked my breakdown last year of the Panthers then.
No, I did think that they improved. He was just mad because he was like, we're clearly better than the Falcons, and I'm like, he goes, where did they improve? And I'm like, coaching. But
That's the biggest thing for the Falcons.
yeah, but I loved it. So
No,
please
no,
please
definitely.
continue that. And if you feel like you
Yeah,
disagree with anything we said in
yeah.
this episode, anything in my breakdown or Javon's breakdowns, comment because we're
Any
here
video.
for it. We
The
obviously want to have that that educational debate on sports. That's what we're here for.
I mean, that's what we do it for. We want to talk about sports. I mean, obviously, Devin and I have some similar takes, but we don't agree on everything. So you know, we're perfectly okay with everybody not agreeing with all of our takes. But we definitely want to hear about them, regardless if you agree with our take or not, and how strongly you might feel about it. Obviously, keep it respectful, but um, you know, whether you agree or disagree, and how strongly you may disagree, we do want to hear about your takes because it definitely lets us see things from your perspective, or it just might we just might read it and be like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? You know what I mean? So we always get something out of it. So
Yeah, it's
we
it's
appreciate
fun.
that. So yeah, just like, follow, subscribe, show some love. As always, we appreciate it, but we out of here. Deuces.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep